Thank you, Johan. My responsibilities in the government is that I'm responsible, as you can imagine, for financial markets. But more than that, I'm also responsible for the public-owned companies, and that is the topic of today, I think, more or less. I'm also responsible for some local municipalities question, as well as lottery policy, which is one of the most difficult things you can imagine. I mean, this Vattenfall, Waterfall, or Nordea, or SE-Bank has nothing to compare to the lottery policy. Nevertheless, in the climate bill presented by the Swedish government, we have announced objectives for 2020 and a vision of Sweden with a sustainable and resource-effective energy supply and no net emissions of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere in 2050. And the government's climate and energy policy targets by 2020 are 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, at least 50% renewable energy, 20% more efficient energy use, and at least 10% renewable energy in the transport sector. Of course, I share the view that this question is the greatest, if not the greatest, one of the greatest challenges of our time. Sweden is a fairly large owner. The people of Sweden is a fairly large owner of businesses. We have 53 companies. 42 of these are fully owned, 11 partly owned. And if these companies should be on a stock exchange, it should have a net value of something like 570 to 600 billion Swedish krona. And if that sum is divided by 9 million Swedes, you will find roughly 60,000 krona per Swede. It's a fortune of each Swede in those companies, and I think that is a very large share of average Swede's savings. So among other things, it's a great responsibility to have this ownership role, of course. And all of these companies are both large and small. It's one of the biggest, largest employers in Sweden, and we have two big private holding companies in Sweden. That is the Wallenberg sphere, Investor, and the Handelsbanken sphere, Industrivärden. And this group of companies is more than twice as much as those holding companies together. So that gives you a sign of the importance. We have decided that responsibility management is a key word for those companies. We have sustainability very high on the agenda when we meet the companies, and we think this is for a number of reasons. First of all, it's about values. We think as an owner of different companies, it will reflect the values of the government or the parliament, you can say, that this question is of greatest importance. More than that, I have the conviction, I'm very certain, that if you want to have profitable companies in the long run for years and years and years to come, I think that it's important that the companies have these things in order. We can see that in questionnaires when you ask people just graduated from high school or universities, that when the young people of today is choosing where to work, the first kind of work they have, they think it's important that this question is in order in those companies. So in order to attract skillful people, it is important that you have these things in order. You also see effects from other part of group that is linked to a firm. For instance, we have problems in the past in one of our companies, Telia, the telecom company, who had activities in Uzbekistan in Asia, as you might remember. What happened here was that owners sold the shares in a large extent. And for instance, a client, the city of Stockholm, they said, we have 40,000 numbers on Telia. Now we will renew that and have a new kind of a auction process because we don't want to be a customer of this kind of a company. So you see reactions from the customers, you see reactions from the owners, and you will eventually see reactions also from the young people that will not be interesting to work in a firm if you don't have these things in order. When we say sustainable, we mean this. We mean environment, human rights, working condition, anti-corruption, business ethics, and gender equality and diversity. This is what we call sustainable. Before we define these kind of words, we had a variety of different definitions. Now we have one definition, and that makes life somewhat more easier. We think that sustainability in the companies is a strategic question, and if you accept that kind of a definition or that kind of a viewpoint, that question belongs to the board. It is nothing that you can delegate to some consultant far away from the leadership. This question must be dealt with in the board of the companies. And that's why we have said that all boards in our 53 companies are to define each of them sustainable targets that is relevant for the company. And we have said relevant for the company means that sustainable targets should be linked to the business model. It is not enough, for instance, to send money to Amnesty Business Group or UNICEF or something like that. You must define targets for sustainability that is linked to the business model. And I think that's the key, really. And that means that the better the company goes, the more result you will have on your sustainability questions as well. We have also said it should be possible to evaluate. It should be few and it should be possible to evaluate. And we want the companies to be ready at the latest first quarter in 2014. Then we will evaluate, when we have these quarterly discussions with the companies, their sustainability targets on a regular basis, at least each quarter for all of these companies. And as an example, already as of today, we have an iron ore company up north in Sweden called LKAB. They have already decided in the board that their carbon dioxide emissions per ton will be reduced from 27 kilo of ton product in 2011 to 17 kilo from 2010. It's almost a 50% reduction. A new generation of climate-smart pellets produced by 2017. Vattenfall, the electricity company, have a strange history. In 1999, their emission of carbon dioxide was 0. In 2006, their emission was almost 90 million ton per year. And that's more than the entire Sweden has as emissions. Their hope, I would say, was to have this storage facility. They could storage carbon dioxide in the ground, but that failed. So now they are stuck with this carbon assets, especially in Germany. Now we try to lower that as well. And the Vattenfall board has decided that the CO2 emissions as a first step will be reduced to 65 million tons by 2020, and that comes from 85 million tons of 2012. Since we have shortage of time, let me go directly to the summary then. The climate change is one of the biggest questions of this generation, if not the biggest. And the state-owned companies should do what they can, and they should be role models to the private sector as well. We would like to be in the forefront, and we'd like other companies to be in our tracks. Sustainability targets has to be set by each company depending to its circumstances. And a lot of companies have done this already, but the latest time for all the 53 is first quarter of 2014. Then it should be relevant targets linked to the business model that is easy to evaluate for their owners, which is us, all the taxpayers in Sweden. Thank you.